So I want to ask you a question. I want you to take it seriously. Do you believe in the devil? When I say the devil, what images come up in your brain? Is it someone with red skin, with a mustache and a goatee, pitchfork and a tail? Do images come up in your head from your past, from your childhood, from maybe children's Bibles of pictures with the devil? Someone named Lucifer, someone named Satan. But regardless of your background or what's coming up in your mind right now when you think of images of the devil, do you believe that the devil exists? Now, the reason why I'm asking this and why it's kind of an important question to ask is because it has to do with the book that I want to talk about today. And that book is Outwitting the Devil. And where there was a book called Conversations with God that maybe you know about, they even made like a little movie about it. This could equally just be called Conversation with the Devil, because that's what the story is about. It is written by a man named Napoleon Hill, who was a very famous writer, the writer of Think and Grow Rich, one of the most successful books ever written. And Napoleon Hill claims that he had a conversation with the devil, and he put those writings together in a book titled Outwitting the Devil, The Secret to Freedom and Success. I had the privilege of listening to the audiobook of this account and this conversation with the devil, and it's been in my mind ever since. And I wanted to share with you because I do believe that whether you do not believe in the devil, there are many important things that you can take away from this book that will teach you how to live a much more fearless life and have faith and freedom. So let's go. So Napoleon Hill is a writer, a very important writer, because he wrote the book Think and Grow Rich. This is a very successful book. It came out in the early 20th century, and it was put together by Napoleon Hill from his teachings that he received from Andrew Carnegie, one of the richest men in American history. This is a great book that I want to cover one day, because through the pages, it's just the voice of Andrew Carnegie. It truly is. And it's this man who had so much success. And when you read it, he gives you a process. He gives you a pathway to achieve your riches, to achieve your dreams. And I bring this up because the first chapters of Outwitting the Devil are Napoleon Hill describing his experience with Carnegie and how he rose into stardom from that book. And not too long after that, he dove into a darkness. He went from complete success to a complete loneliness, a dark place, isolation. He hit some real low points in his life, and he pretty much explains about how he thought, if I know all these gifts, if I'm the one who helped put together Think and Grow Rich, how come I am struggling? How come I'm going through this? And as he slowly pulls himself out of this funk, he comes face to face with what he describes as the devil. And in this conversation with the devil, he gets the truth. That's what he claims. So, do you believe it? Do you buy it? Do you think he really had a conversation with the devil? The only way to know is to jump right in. So, let's take a look. The first thing to know about this book is that it's annotated by a woman named Sharon Lechter. This is very important because it's supposed to be a conversation, right? Part of it is Napoleon Hill's backstory that he gives. Part of it is his discussion and his conversation with the devil. And then part of it is this annotation by Sharon Lechter. She kind of adds like a modern viewpoint to some of the things that are discussed. She proposes questions to the audience. She even provides a bit of interpretation of the battle between Napoleon Hill and the devil. So I want you to think about this when it comes to the book, because when it comes to the book, there are three distinct voices in this book. That is the voice of Napoleon Hill, the devil, and Sharon Lechter. Those are three different egos that are trying to make their points in this story. So if you decide to pick up this book, read the book, or get the audiobook, remember that. Remember what you're hearing are different points of view from three different egos. In this conversation, Napoleon Hill goes by the name Mr. Earthbound, which is given to him by the devil. And the devil, in return, asks to be called Your Majesty. Kind of weird, right? Yes, I think so. And in fact, if you listen to the audiobook, the person who does the voice of the devil is, he's a great voice actor.
During this interview, you will address me as Your Majesty.
But you can tell it's really a lot of voice acting behind the devil's words. Now, what does this conversation teach us about who the devil is? Well, it shows that the devil is not a monster. There are no horns, there's no pitchfork. He is simply energy, negative energy. In fact, he says that he is the electron that makes up the atom. He is part of human existence, nothing more. So he's no big monster. He's not all the things that you've seen before. He gets rid of that right away. He just explains about how he is simply part of life, part of human existence. And the main things that we learn about the devil from this book, the most important things that we can take with us, are the devil's weaknesses, the devil's powers, and the devil's desires. So what is the devil's power? Well, the devil's power, what he claims, is occupying the parts of the human brain that are not being used. He feeds the mind with fear, and he explains 6 different fears that keep you under his power. Those fears are poverty, criticism, ill health, loss of love, old age, and death. If the devil gets in your head with these and they take control, I don't think any human being would be able to survive. In fact, in this conversation, the devil says that there is no hell. The hell is only in your mind. It's the fear that he is able to plant in there and eventually control you with. Think about that, especially when we're taught that the kingdom of heaven is at hand, or it's in your mind, or it's in your heart. I think it's the same thing when it comes to hell, from what the devil is describing here. And the devil claims to have control over 98% of the population on earth because of these fears. 98%. That's kind of hard to believe, but at the same time, not too hard to believe. How many people do we know have mastery over those fears? Well, that's talking about the devil's power. So now I would like to talk about the devil's weaknesses. So when it comes to the devil's weaknesses, what do we have? His number one weakness is people who use their own minds, people who think for themselves. His weakness is the positive force in life, and he explains about how we're all surrounded by it. The whole universe is made up of it. So it is stronger than him. But then he also explains that he has no interest in the universe. He has no interest in space and everything out there. All he's fighting for is human beings' minds. Now, how does he do that? Isn't that really a good, valuable thing to be able to learn from this book? Is how exactly does the devil get into people's minds? Well, he explains it. The devil's main tool is drifting. Drifting is pretty much bad habit. These are the thoughts and things that he invades your mind with that get you away from your passions, away from your drive, and gets you into habit, the habit of what he calls drifting. And he says that drifting sends you directly to hell. And he explains about how he has to try his best to be like a constant nagging in your mind to sow the seeds of doubt, of failure, of fear. And then he gives an explanation of who drifters are, what they look like in this life. They are people who do not think for themselves. They are people who have many opinions, but none of their own. They have no focus on their own life. They're too busy focusing on others. They are people who are lazy. They might have great ideas, but they can't get them running. And there are people sometimes who are attacked before even birth with who they were brought through in what life, with what parents. It's hereditary. And then he explains about how later, through attraction, we find it in our environment. We end up logging into people who are similar to us and who are also drifters. So drifting is the main tool of the devil, remember that. The second tool is very difficult to read and to comprehend, to understand, and to let in. But his second tool is going after children. Children are undeveloped minds, so he claims that he can get in there earlier. He can start them on drifting at a young age. And to do so, he says that he uses the adults who are in charge of children, teachers at schools, through religious leaders. They don't allow children to think for themselves, and they bombard them with fear. Fear of failure, fear of the devil. The fear of hell keeps kids frozen. He explains about how fear paralyzes kids and destroys their ability to reason. So children are really hurt by those who don't allow them to think for themselves. And the main goal out of all of this is something called hypnotic rhythm. Hypnotic rhythm is the last stage of habit. It is like a stream of water that goes through, a stream of habit. Hypnotic rhythm becomes a river that cannot be reversed. Drifting becomes permanent when it becomes hypnotic rhythm. That's when a soul is truly lost. You might have seen the recent Disney Pixar movie called Soul, and how the people who pretty much drift in that movie become lost souls. So how do you fight this? How do you gain power over the devil? Well, you become a non-drifter. And he explains this. The devil explains this in the book about how there are certain types of people that he cannot grab a hold of. He cannot get in their mind. He cannot bombard them enough. And these are the main points of the non-drifter. Non-drifters are engaged in life. They are always doing something. They are doing something definite. Non-drifter has a plan. They have a life plan. They have big goals and also minor goals. A non-drifter has a physical demeanor that's just going forward, pep in your step, a sparkle in your eye. We see this in many of the people that we really admire in life. A non-drifter also communicates fearlessly. A non-drifter knows the value of giving. They are often seen giving to others before even taking for themselves. A non-drifter becomes an inspiration to others. Overall, when it comes down to it, what he describes is that a non-drifter has a mind of his or her own. And he explains about how this is available to all human beings. Now, one of the last things in this conversation between Napoleon Hill and Your Majesty is a list of how you can outwit the devil, how you can win against the negative energy that is a part of our lives. And I want to share that with you right now. Through this conversation, they explain that the way to outwit the devil is to have a definiteness of purpose. It is much more healthy than you would ever imagine to be able to choose a purpose or an aspiration, a goal, and then move towards it relentlessly. That alone, that maintaining that dream and that hope will keep you safe. One of the next ways you can outwit the devil is mastery over self. Self-discipline leads to freedom. If you are driven by impulse, if you just jump into things with no definiteness of purpose, then you will go nowhere. Even though you think that you are being active, you are actually a drifter. The next way to outwit the devil is to learn from adversity. In fact, failures lead to much more learning than your successes. Failures are just failures. They're life lessons. You just keep going. The next way to outwit the devil is controlling environmental influence. This is very important to me. I saw how it affected me in my life, being surrounded by the wrong kinds of people, and then myself becoming one of those wrong types of people. Who you hang out with matters. What you look like, what you project into your environment matters. So if you choose positive force and you choose yourself to surround yourself with people like that, of course it will influence yourself. The next tool in outwitting the devil is time. Time makes drifting permanent, right? With enough drifting, enough negativity, over time, you can have hypnotic rhythm. But it also goes the other way. You can feed that seed of positivity and give it time, give it growth, give it love. And that seed will grow into a tree that is immovable. And he explains about how positivity and wisdom can become permanent because of this. The next tool to outwit the devil is harmony. In order for you to gain balance, mental balance, spiritual balance, in all the physical aspects of life, you must be the main actor. And you must work with others in harmony. When you think about harmony, you think about sounds coming together to make something angelic, something completely beautiful to your ears. I believe it's the same way when it comes to your aura, when it comes to who you are as a person outside of your body. That when you are in harmony, and you walk into areas, people feel it, they know it, they understand it. So living a life of harmony will keep you out of the devil's control. And the last tool that he talks about to be able to outwit the devil is caution. You have to always act, but you have to think before you act. I encourage you to look at this list and look at the list that I had before and just go over them. Just pause it and just take a good look at both and see what it means to you in your life. And with that, I would like to end by giving a little bit of my review of the book. I'm 46 now, and it's like, where has the time gone? Drifting in my life. It has taken so much time from me. That is one of the saddest things, as looking back and realizing that there were years it feels like that I was drifting. Years that I never wrestled this big devil monster, but that I allowed things in my head to be able to overpower me of not being worthy, not being good enough, so much that I allowed it to cripple myself. I look at the times when I had a full life, and usually during that time I was really active. I was doing things, I think about my life now. I know I'm able to look at this list and realize I live a beautiful life. I'm active with my kids, and I am grateful that I have my children and my wife that have given me this full life. And also when I think about this book, I also think about the weak-minded, which makes me really sad. And education is a great thing. It strengthens you in here and in here. But for some children who are run by fear, they can get straight A's and they are still weak in here and weak in there. You can always remember that someone like Charles Manson, who people think was evil and crazy, was able to get a high school valedictorian to follow him. And I think about the same way with religion. I love religions. I love studying about spirituality, but I also know it's a place where many people drift, where they lose their own minds and their own thoughts. They lose themselves, and it's under this blanket of security or what they're doing is right. That makes me really sad, and that actually frightens me quite a bit. Social media. Come on, man. Social media. Isn't that like the definition of drifting? I mean, we all know that the internet is a great place. I mean, I'm actually working on it right now, trying to give messages of hope, of healing, of strengthening. But we know that we see most people on the street just completely tuned out to a device right in front of our faces. In fact, we can see that it's actually like a recruitment place for gathering people of fear. You know, a pandemic comes, you lose your job, you lose family members. You find confidence by following something that you find online. That happened to so many people. So many people I still care about to this day. I don't wish them any harm. I don't want to even talk crap about them. When it comes down to it, I've drifted plenty of times in my life. I felt so low that I just gave over the keys to someone else to be able to help lead me. I didn't have the strength to think for myself. And this has happened to a lot of people during this very stress-filled, fearful time. And last, I would like to say that this book, and drifting, is kind to me is like almost the antithesis of Malcolm Gladwell's book, Outliers, which is about how to become a genius in your life. I love that book. Whether it takes 10,000 hours or 10 years to create genius, it doesn't really matter to me whether that's true or not. But I do look at the truths and the people who I've seen who are geniuses, and they put as much time into creativity and doing something right and something positive as much as drifters go into the negative. It's a choice, isn't it? Isn't that what we find out from this book? It's kind of like the movie Soul. And when that movie Soul, it explains about how when you are doing something that's positive and you're in the flow and you're tuned out a bit, you're actually tuned into something greater. You're tuned into divinity. And that same ability to tune out can also have you tuning out from life and cause you to drift, showing that there's a fine line from being in the zone and from being lost. So that's my review. It wasn't really a review. It's more, I think it's just what I wanted to share with those of you who might be interested in picking up the book. The book is called Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. If you want, give it a look. The message is something great. And even reviewing this book, put the seed back in there about how I gotta get moving. Love you. Peace.